All right, folks. So several civil society groups have demanded from the House Speaker to issue a public apology and withdraw the letter of reprimand issued to the former House Clerk, Mrs. Valerie Curtis. Political commentator, Mr. Lloyd B. Smith, joins us now via Zoom for this discussion. Morning, Sir Lloyd. How are you, sir?
Good morning, gentlemen. I am reasonably well. I should say bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Great to have you, sir. I know in the House yesterday there were high praise for Mrs. Curtis from the government, from the Speaker of the House. Let me start by just asking a light question is this much ado about nothing, or is this a serious business, and do you agree that there should be an apology and the withdrawal of the letter?
I think it's a serious business because it's setting a wrong precedent whereby the political arm of government can just, callously and without much regard embarrass and humiliate an outstanding public servant, So it's not a light matter, and it should not be treated so at all. So there's every reason to support civil society's call for an appropriate apology and the withdrawal of the letter.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding the fact that we are now told that the letter was not put on our file, but that is almost cosmetic at this point. The important thing is that in the public's eye, there will remain this perception that needs to be fully corrected. And the only way that perception can fully go away is for the apology to be done and for the letter to be withdrawn.
Okay, sir. In your opinion, was the letter warranted in the first place?
I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me now, sir? Can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
Oh, let's hope that we will get that fixed. We're speaking with Mr. Lloyd B. Smith, who is a former member of Parliament for the People's National Party, by the way. And I think he was the Deputy House Speaker also.
At one point.
Yeah, at one point I think he was the Deputy House Speaker.
I was Deputy Speaker, Neville.
Yeah, can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
My question was, in your opinion, was the letter warranted in the first place?
Well, based on the information that has been out there so far, both in terms of what the Speaker herself has said and the opposition, as well as we are now hearing from the Prime Minister and Bartlett, leader of government business, we are yet to know what was the basis, because even in her profuse statement yesterday, the Speaker skillfully avoided outrightly apologizing. Instead, she used a lot of what I would call euphemistic language and, to sweeten the pot, so to speak. But, an apology is an apology. You can't get around it. You can't circumvent it. And until that is done, the Speaker will be held, responsible for having done something to Miss Curtis, which on the surface does seem to have been unfair and to some extent also unlawful, because let's not forget now that due process was not followed. In common law, we all know that a person is not guilty until proven so. And there are procedures in the civil service, in the public service, that must be followed when you are going to reprimand or punish an employee. Yeah. And all of that didn't seem to have been done, so it begs the question still.
Okay.
On that note of due process not being followed, etc., how differently then should the House Speaker have handled any situation between herself and Ms. Curtis?
Well, to begin with, I am a manager myself, and the basic procedure is that you call in the person into your office, you lock the door, no holds barred, and you state whatever your concerns are. She would have responded. If you were not sufficiently satisfied, you would then set about to have a procedure whereby she would have to face some kind of tribunal, which would then determine whether or not there were any grounds for her to be sufficiently so reprimanded. That was not done. Remember, from what I read in press reports, she was on her way home with her son in her vehicle when she first heard about this letter. So the letter was distributed apparently, allegedly so, even before she had got it, and that in itself is egregious.
Yeah. Now, with the different civil society groups advocating for an apology and a withdrawal of the letter, how does that kind of affect the relationship, for example, between the House Speaker and those groups, and just generally speaking, the government and those groups?
Well, I think for starters, in the wider public sphere, there's still a bitter taste in the mouth. Apart from narrow partisan reactions, which will always happen, and we can't really put that in the mix at this stage. You're going to have some persons who, by virtue of their political color, will take a particular position. But there is no evidence that Miss Curtis has ever been seen as a political animal in any way. She has been seen as a distinguished public servant. So in that context, what has happened to her will have affected the overall credibility of the Speaker as well as the government. And this cloud will continue to hang over their heads historically, currently and historically. 10, 20 years' time, that cloud will still be hanging there. The best way to get rid of that cloud is to apologize.
Allow me to play devil's advocate for a brief moment. If, as you just said, with no apology or withdrawal of the letter, that cloud will continue to hang over the current Speaker of the House. However, if she apologizes and withdraws the letter, doesn't that also kind of go against her in terms of credibility and any kind of political points lost there?
I don't necessarily think so. There are times when one has to rise above the fray. And to me, I think the fear is that the opposition may get some, political capital out of this. I don't necessarily see it in that narrow context because, as I said, and which is unfortunate because this thing should not have reached where it has reached, to the extent now where it almost becomes a political football. It should not have reached here. If Mrs. Onis had done the right thing from day one and apologized, then we wouldn't have been this toing and froing with the opposition and the government. I still believe that there are sufficient well-thinking Jamaicans that far outweigh any narrow partisan hacks out their view of this issue, and that if Mrs. Onis should do the right thing, her stature in the society in general would have been greatly improved.
May I read something to you, sir, from the House Speaker yesterday? Our differences in perspectives on a particular administrative matter and the resulting procedural communication to her, which was never placed on her HR record, as you said earlier, but which was unfortunately circulated in the public domain, was never intended to distract from her years of service and valuable contribution to the Parliament. She continued, noting that she holds the retired clerk in high regard, acknowledges her contribution, an indelible mark of the Parliament, and would not allow that to be overshadowed for any reason. That didn't go far enough for you, did it?
No, words, as Hamlet said in Shakespeare, the play, words, words, words. I mean, we can always use words to butter up things and to cover up things and to, create a sort of mirage. The fact is that, as I said before, an apology is an apology is an apology. And you never, and your co-host know that if somebody does you wrong, no matter how they try to butter it up, they could take you to dinner, you could do everything possible to that person. If you don't say, look, I am sorry. It no make no difference. The pain is still there.
Thanks for
An
speaking.
apology is an apology.
Yep.
And what is so difficult for her to apologize?
Yep. Thanks for-
I'm almost tempted to say that she should be man enough to apologize.
She should be speaker enough. Thanks for speaking with us this morning, sir. God bless you and your family. Be safe.
And God bless you both. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day now. Thank you. Bye.
That's political commentator Mr. Lloyd B. Smith. Now, after the break, we take a look at the important role played by admin professionals. So don't go anywhere.